That was really interesting. And now with the help of our talented dancers from the dance company 20, we will leave the 1970s, when it all started. We will leave the past and head into more modern times. And we'll do it with the greatest show.
Gents, this is the moment you've waited for. You've been searching in the dark, your sweat soaking through the floor. And buried in your bones, there's an ache that you can't ignore. Taking your breath, stealing your mind, and all that was real is left behind. Don't fight it, it's coming for you, running at you. It's only this moment, don't care what can gather. Your fever dream, can't you see getting closer? Just surrender cause you feel the feeling taking over. It's fire, it's freedom, it's flooding open. It's a picture in the pulpit and your blind devotion. There's something breaking at the brick of every wall. It's holding all that you know. So tell me, do you want to go where it's covered in all the colored lights, where the runaways are running the night? Impossible comes true, it's taking over you. We light it up, we won't come down, and the sun can't stop us now. Watching it come true, it's taking over you. This is where you wanna be. When it's covered in all the colored lights, when the runaways are running the night, impossible comes true, it's taking over you. This is the greatest show. It's covered in all the colored lights, when the runaways are running the night, impossible comes true, it's taking over you. This is the greatest show. We light it up, we won't come down, and the walls can't stop us now. Watching it come true, it's taking over you. This is the greatest show.
Wow. I hope you were paying attention because you'll be doing the same in the foyer a little bit later. So maybe you recorded it, right? The greatest show, and it was performed by The Future, here by the dance company 20, and leading us into a future toward our final discussion of today. Because how do we secure the Nordic horizon? How do we secure our democracies, our way of life for the next 50 years? The world, as we have known it, we just heard it in debate as well, has changed. Russia has declared war in Europe. Global geopolitical tensions are rising. Our institutions are under attack. At the same time, we're facing Arctic heat waves, record Arctic heat waves, and the biggest rearmament drive since the Cold War. All of this have pushed and pressured the Nordic model and have pushed the model into uncharted waters, raising questions. How do we prioritize? Can we, as we heard on stage, can we merge security and sustainability? Is it possible to protect our welfare and remain a global leader when it comes to climate, and still establish strong collective security at the same time? Can all of these problems be solved in tandems? And how do we do it? That will be the focus of our second debate today. To discuss this matter, please welcome together here on stage as a group, first from Denmark, the CEO of Lundbeck Foundation. Its mission is to bring discoveries to life, Lene Skole. From Norway, the CEO of O Energy that produces and distributes clean renewable energy across the Nordic region, Stefan Sivertsen. And finally from Finland, the president and CEO of the defense and technology company Part3, Esa Rautalinko. Please welcome them here on stage. Welcome everyone, please come and take a seat. Thank you. Lene sat next to me. Welcome.
Thank you.
Have a seat. Thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know about you guys, but some mornings I wake up and I kind of dread to look at my news feed. And I'm a journalist. Do you feel the same, that the pace and the uncertainty is just at a very high level?
Yes, that was what I decided I wanted to say before I came here today. But then looking at the history of NIB, you also realize that that has been the case before. And maybe we've just been through a period where we have been quite lucky with some peace and quiet. And those of you out there, I can't point to myself, that may not have turned 50 yet, may not even remember that we have had situations like this before. But it is true that today, compared to the past few years, there is a lot more tension. There's a lot more geopolitical tension, a lot more threat. And when I think about it in our day-to-day job, I think very much about basically three things that have come into our world. Is both traditional war, as we have heard about in Ukraine, also hybrid warfare, which is new to us. We haven't tried that before. Competitiveness. Where is Europe compared to what's happening in US and China, and how do we fit into that? And the technology race. And I think these are some of the things that really matters when you think about the world today. It does make you think about European defense. That's absolutely true. It also makes you think about regulation, energy prices. How do we become competitive? On the technology side, it makes us think about, wow, we are really dependent on the US. Is that a great situation to be in, or do we want to change that? So I think some of the thoughts that go through also our work when we think about our investments really are around, sort of, at least for Europe, how do we then create this sort of strategic resilience? How do we create some autonomy? And there are many ways of doing it, and we have talked about defense earlier today in the panel, but I think there is more to it than that. If I were to say at least sort of three things, I would say defense, yes, we need that, no doubt about it. We also need energy, affordable energy, and a security that we get it. And then one thing that I don't think we talk enough about, we do talk about what happened under COVID, but we don't talk enough about the importance of health. How do we ensure that in Europe we are in control of our own health and medicines, that we are no longer dependent on the US? Those are some of the things that actually take up a lot of room, sort of space in our thinking.
And we'll dive deeper into that in a little while. Stefan, I'd like to address this to you. In our Nordic-Baltic region, everything is so intertwined when it comes to our economies, our infrastructures. And I'm just thinking, if you have a disruption in one, it can quickly kind of impact all of us. I was wondering, when you look at how easy it was for you to get investment in just a few years ago, green, clean energy, Is it still easy today with all the challenges we're facing right now?
I would say that everything has changed. So when I started as a CEO 6 years ago, we actually had the lowest electricity prices ever in the Nordics. And now, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we have had the highest prices ever. But still, to fund important infrastructure projects between the countries and in the countries in the electricity sector, and the long-term economically feasible projects that we have in hydropower and the grids, where we have NIB as a partner for a long, long time, that is quite financeable still. But for some other projects, it has changed a lot. So we started in 2019, we started 2 companies in NIB. We started one battery storage company, now one of the largest in Europe, building large battery storage plants in Germany and actually in Finland. And we started a battery cell production company in the south of Norway called Morrow. You know, the battery storage company has been enormously successful because of very, very low battery prices and high volatility in the energy markets. And the Chinese batteries has helped that company a lot. On the other hand, for Northvolt or for Morrow, trying to produce batteries, it's been very, very challenging and actually impossible to finance it going forward as well. So you need to adapt to that. And when we started this in 2019, we didn't know how that world would change up until now.
What the world would look like. So it's become more difficult in your chair. Then I would like to move to you, Isa, because in the past we saw investors declining to interact with defense companies in the military industry complex. But that changed after Russia's full invasion war in Ukraine. In a few words, how would you describe the shift we've seen when it comes to security and defense, especially when it comes to investments?
Well, when it comes to investments, let's talk about the Nordics and Baltics. So even in the past, before 22, and even before Crimea in 2014, so there were actually financial institutions who were very, very happy to finance defense, but depending on the country. So Finland has always been pretty defense positive in that sense, in those investments. And then depending on each individual country, so the sentiment has been different. Now when we are looking at the situation, so for instance, using NIB as an example, so last year NIB actually accepted financing of dual-use products, and now the summer of this year also as a harder defense material like armaments, ammunition, and so forth. And when we are discussing with the financiers today, so one could not say that there's a competition, but almost of that kind. When certain financial institutions today they are saying that actually they cannot fulfill their ESG obligations without defense. There is still a difference, even if you take, let's say, big international corporations, they might be Nordic or German or so forth. They have their own guidelines and principles, but how they are applying those in different countries, that varies. And actually the story they are telling is, well, it depends on the society where they are working and how the society would accept certain things. But I think the overall thing is going forward very, very well. Then I think there's also the rather materialistic approach as well, because if we are thinking about the growth of defense today, at least for the next 20 years, this industry is going to grow. It's going to be the biggest growing industry in the whole of Europe for the foreseeable future. So then naturally the point is that as the European economy is where it is, so then a question for a banker would be that, okay, and where do I make my margins? Where's the profitability? And then you would have investors who are telling that actually, why aren't you including something in your portfolio? So I think that's also the background. But I think overall, people have started to understand that without credible defense, everything else is built on sand. So when we are talking about more, let's say more let's say, more agreeable investments, whether it would be civilian, high-tech, or what have you. So that needs to be protected. So I think in that sense, now we are aligned. And I think the position today is pretty positive.
Everything is built on sand if you don't have credible defense, as you say. Lena, I'd like to turn to you because you mentioned that you would like policymakers, investors, basically all of us to see security in a much broader term. Could you elaborate on that? Because one thing is we have sustainability, the green transition and so forth, and defense. But you say we need to look at a much broader term. What do you mean?
I think it's extremely dangerous to just focus on one sector. That will simply not work. We need more than that. I certainly believe we need defense. Absolutely no question about that. But, you know, tanks can't really feed us and they can't really help us if we're sick. We need something else as well. So we need, I think, to prioritize among many things on what are the key things that will create this resilience and, in a way, a defense and robustness of the European, Nordic and European area. And to me, that's more than defense in its traditional shape. That is also, as you talked about, energy. We need that. We need cheap energy. We need to be able to be competitive and depend on ourselves and not be dependent on everyone else. And we need to be healthy, to stay healthy. We can even think we also need to be sure that we actually attract good talent. But there are several sort of areas that we need to prioritize. And I know you might think, okay, then she just thinks we want everything. But no, there are certain things where we do need to prioritize and say, this is really important for us, because otherwise we will not be sort of a resilient, robust economy also in the future.
Because you say an attack can come in many different ways.
Yes.
You think about a biological attack as well, maybe.
It could also happen, yes. I mean, we could just see how everybody seemed to panic when COVID came, and where we managed to somehow be able to get through that in Europe. But I also remember a lot of ministers and politicians and so on, all of a sudden think, can we build a supply chain right now within pharma biologicals? No, you cannot. It takes a long, long, long time. But I think there are certain things we should learn that we need to have. And to me, the key things is defense, it's affordable energy, and it is health. Being able to control our destiny there is really key.
And green energy to kind of drive it all. Yes. I was just wondering, what we've been discussing all day is that the security on which we based basically our welfare and well-being since the Second World War is, of course, no longer a guarantee. We know that. We have to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. We also know that's quite a long way until we're actually able to do this. Stefan, I was just wondering, from your point of view, when you look at the energy sector, how vulnerable do you think we are right now?
I think it's important to start saying that we are one of the most robust and resilient energy systems in the world. We are fully intertwined. We have been building infrastructure between the Nordic countries and other countries for a long, long time, since the 1960s. We have developed different complementary energy sources in the different markets. In Norway and in Sweden, we have vast hydropower resources. Actually in Norway, we have more than 50% of the reservoir capacity for hydro in all of Europe. And, you know, the Danes, you have the onshore wind and the offshore wind competencies that are among the strongest in the world. And the Finns and the Swedes, you have a lot of nuclear capacity and also wind. So if you put that together, we are quite resilient. At the same time, we heard the ministers here before saying that, yes, they are cooperating very well at all levels. I see that it's too slow. I see that we are not enough together to discuss how can we build out the complementarities that we have in the different markets. And we are actually a role model for the world. You know, we are fully non-fossil already in the electricity. We produce more renewable electricity than what we can use as one of the only parts of the world. And we have been balancing energy markets with renewables in it for a very long time. And that is now what happens in Germany, France, and a lot of the other countries. And we can also use a lot of that competencies going out with the companies that we have in the Nordics.
And I'm going to address the same question to you. How vulnerable do you think we are from your corner of the world?
Well, I would basically like to elaborate on Lena's comment, because I think that was very, very valuable. So if we are just thinking about defense as hard military capabilities, so then we actually we make a mistake. Mm-hmm. And there's a saying in Finland going that, look, you can serve your country in many ways, either in a uniform, in social security, and so forth. So I won't bother you with the Finnish concept of comprehensive security, but just giving an example that, so the worst happened, and we would be at war. So we have around 1.5 million people in Finland who would have wartime positions, and that goes for the police, it goes for healthcare, it goes to the energy sector and so forth. So basically it means that the people who are of working age, over a half of Finns would have a wartime position they have been trained for. And therefore I think there are so many facets to this one. I think one of the key things over here is social justice. Because basically the worst that could happen to a society would be that we start to crumble from the inside. So that's one of the things. So the unity of the nations, the unity of the Nordics, Baltics, that's essential. So and then it comes to things like our literacy of media and so forth. So there are so many things over here. And just making a bridge to energy, I think this might be during the very, very dark backdrop we are having now, having the Russian aggression. Once again, I think Finland has had recorded conflicts of wars with those guys for, 42 times? Will there be number 43? Let's make sure it doesn't happen, but certainly there might be planning. This might be the defining moment when we can combine our military and defense capabilities, that resilience, together with the green transition. If we are thinking about how vulnerable we are, I think the biggest vulnerability or weakness we would have in our geographical area is the dependency on fossil fuel. So the more we have renewable green energy, the more sustainable we are, the better we are all off, the more we would have security of supply. And that would all run into the same purpose. I don't know, for certain military people, probably we need to launch a new term and talk about resilient energy or something like that, because I think at the end of the day, it's the same thing. But if we don't have energy, so all our actions are futile. So therefore, I think we need to have a call of action for all of the other players in the field, all industries, all financiers, that what's their angle towards comprehensive security. And it's not necessarily hard military capabilities, it can be something totally else, because we need to be resilient over here. So therefore I think we do have a common cause.
Lena, you.
I just wanted to build a little bit on what you said, and also to remember some of the things that were said in the last panel up here. And I remember it was mentioned that when NIB was founded, there was some doubt as to whether it would be governed by sort of national interest. And we also heard that that had never been the case. We talked a lot about sort of what are the Nordic values, and I think this is a key one. That is the ability to align around common goals and work together on those goals. And if we somehow in the Nordic can bring that to EU, where what I see is actually a little bit the opposite, to provoke a bit, that you are really good at the speeches as to what you should do, but as soon as you really start talking about it, it comes down to local interest and how many voters will vote for me if I say this or that. And I think if we can somehow help and push the European Union, EU, to also say, well, we need to align on common goals, then we need to fix it if it hurts someone, but then we can really move and not be just focused on local interests. And I think that's something we can get out of this.
Exactly.
So.
You mentioned that it's just going a little bit too slow. I think, unfortunately, she has left our meeting, otherwise we could have asked about the pace. Stefan, I was wondering, in the US, we have an American president that has slashed the Paris Climate Agreement again, and his message is drill, baby, drill. We just heard you mention that it's so important that we become independent, clean energy driving it all. But what will it take for Europe to stand on course independently on this green transition, despite these diverging values we're seeing in the US?
Actually, I think we are seeing it happen right now. You know, Ursula von der Leyen a couple of days ago, she said, now we're going to step out of the Russian gas. And they are actually doing it. So even if it's hurting Europe.
2027, right?
Yeah, and you have to understand that going in with a lot of wind and solar, trying to take out the Russian gas, it changes the full energy system. So the grid problems, the problems with the systems, with the markets, making 50 hertz every second of the day is very, very hard. But what we already see is that a lot of it is solvable. So what we have seen the last years with battery storage, grid investments, new systems, AI in managing all these systems are actually solving a lot of the issues that we thought were impossible a couple of years ago. But still, energy security is national security. Yeah. And we see that in Russia. If you want, in Ukraine, what Russia is doing, if you want to destroy a society, what are they doing? They are bombing the grid transformation stations. And they're doing that massively. More than 60% of them were out. Yeah. And going into a cold winter, and we know how it is to be here in the north, thinking about the people in Ukraine, I think it's devastating to see. And that and of course also here in the Nordic, we have to balance the transition with resilience. But we come from a very different starting point than a lot of other places in the world. And that can also be a strong competitive advantage if we manage to increase the investments also going forward.
And investments will come back to. I'm just wondering, you say, this is the road we need to walk. But the reality is also that we're still depending in so many ways on the US. Also when it comes to security. And I'm just wondering, we just saw a trade agreement this summer between the EU and the US that, for instance, gave a lot of buy-in on fossil fuel. I'm just wondering if all of you, and I'll address it to all of you, do you fear that Europe will kind of follow suit with the United States and step back from the green promises and commitments due to, let's just call it, geopolitical pressure? Lene?
I hope not. I don't actually think so. I think we may be talking about it a little bit differently to please others, and some, and in particular one.
Audience of one.
But I don't think we will, in reality, step back from it. And actually what I'm seeing, and you already mentioned it, I'm also seeing that in Europe, yes, there's more talk about how do we build out the grid, because you're absolutely right, we can do it if we want to. And we see for the green energy transition that governments are now realizing that the heydays of low and decreasing interest rates are gone, and you need to maybe subsidize them more. So I don't see us stepping back from it. I see us talking a little bit less about it, but you might have other views.
What do you think?
Well, not going to politicize this one, but I think it's only common sense that we are staying on the path that actually we have selected in Europe, and that comes back to resilience and so forth. However, I want to give one perspective concerning the US as worried we might be what's happening. So there are these dependencies where even the US is not self-sufficient. And one example, there are no tariffs today in defense material. Why is that? Because the US will not build a single F-35 without the European industry. So there are these, so we are also intertwined. then we need to be very careful when we are talking about European sovereignty and so forth. Let's make sure we are not, at least now I'm talking about defense, the so-called hard defense. We should not rock the boat too much, because there are these dependencies, and we know that the capabilities Europe does not have. Even if we put all the effort and start today, we will have those capabilities ready in operational use in the 2050s. But there are these interdependencies. And interestingly enough, that was 2 years ago in October. You might remember what happened in the beginning of October 2023 in Israel. And I was in Congress and discussing with Democrats and Republicans. They were all, well, naturally that was before Trump too, but still the same people. They were saying that actually it's absolutely essential for the US interests that the transatlantic connection is going to stay. Then naturally, is it through the EU and through what kind of rules and regulations, or is it more bilateral and so forth? So that's the thing. And they said that Europe needs to ramp up its resilience. And then they continued in unison, saying that because we might be busy elsewhere. And that was the time when Ukraine, naturally, that attack had raged for a year and a half. The very following day, the strike over to Israel came and went back to Congress and said, well, now we are busy elsewhere. And what they are really preparing themselves for is any eventualities in the Indo-Pacific. So in a sense, I would say that if we are sort of positively stubborn when we are talking about sustainability, energy resilience and so forth, it's only common sense. Whatever fossil fuels we might have, well, we know that now Russia is closed. We need for a certain period of time, for sure, we need oil and gas. So there will be plenty of business to be done with the US as well for the foreseeable future. So I think in a sense, people behind the scenes, they are more sensible than one might read from the articles. And one last point about this one. In every single NATO meeting, when the industry is there, all of this is discussed exactly on the lines we are discussing right now. Everybody understands, and the soldiers do understand what we are talking about.
Stefan, as you mentioned before, you also, Lena, that the EU can be a slow locomotive, but it can act if it needed. We saw that during the pandemic. I'm just wondering, is it your experience that they see, policymakers, when you talk to them, that they see this as intertwined when we talk about investments? Let's start with the policymakers. That it's not just energy, or not just defense, or not just health. Do they see them as intertwined, or do you still think that they're thinking in sequences?
I think we have a lot of good European politicians. They understand how everything is intertwined. But as we can see now in the political debate, they have to balance this, also here in Denmark, towards getting the people with them on that journey. And that has been hard in a lot of countries. So the Draghi report, he tells us, he tells us what we need to do in Europe. But
and how much has been, actually done? Very little, right?
Yeah. But still, I think if you look into some of the biggest economies in Europe, there has been a lot of change the last 10 years. Germany is an example. Yeah. When I think about NIB having the head office in Helsinki, then I also think about Alexander Stubb, your prime minister. And maybe he's a president, sorry.
He used to be the prime minister as well.
He's kind of role modeling how we need to do it. We have, of course, to stand hard behind our values, but still we need to be pragmatic in how we work together with the most important allies that we have. Because it's 5 years ago in the green transition, all of us thought that we can do it very, very fast. We just scaled every investment. The problem was that we couldn't really get the grid, the regulators, the markets with us. And we need to do this in the Nordics. We need to find that balance of how fast, go as fast as we can, but still get people with us, and also manage to develop a system that is sustainable and resilient. And that is a lot of hard work, and includes a lot of different sectors. politicians, business, industries, and we also need to get the people with us, as we are democracies.
In a way, I agree with you. I think I'm just not as patient as you are. I do think we are moving too slowly. I agree that I think politicians understand it. They can think about it as one big thing. But I do think there is a tendency that things get stuck. They get stuck somehow and don't move as fast as it could be. Yes, we need to build out the grid, and I also agree with you that we need to plan how we do things. And this planning is actually also comes back to my point that we somehow need to agree on what's important and be able to do that for Europe as a whole and not optimize for each country, because I think still that is an issue that we have. The Draghi report, yes, it tells us what to do. We are just too slow in actually implementing it. I'm sorry to say, and I'm just maybe not nearly as patient as you are, but I think there's a lot more we could do faster if we wanted to. And yes, we need to get the people with us, but we also need to be pragmatic. We're not going to get 100% with us, but we need to find a way where everyone can see that this is actually for the greater good of Europe. So just agreeing, but let's just move a bit faster.
And while we wait for Europe then I can ask you, all the strong supporters of the Nordic Baltic region, how can we act on our own while we're waiting and kind of lead the way? Can I hear suggestions from you, from your point of view? What is needed?
Well, basically, I think, as in all human life, whenever something new appears, they are always the early adapters. And then slowly, it's starting to grow, and then you will have the last ones joining the laggers. And now I think we've reached, in many ways, I think we have reached a positive tipping point, and that's because of Germany. And I would also count Poland in. And I'm pretty sure that now in Belgium, the Netherlands, certain things are starting to happen. So we are very much on that turning point in a positive sense. Then the question is that how much should we worry about the ones who are not yet on the wagon? And how much should we actually put effort to the ones who already are the believers, who already are over there and working on that respect? In a sense, there has been a lot of discussion about the coalition of the willing, and then it comes to defending Ukraine. I think NIB is a 50 years old coalition of the willing. So then the question is that, okay, what are the things that are totally in our own decision-making powers? What's within our authority? And I don't have a sort of magic wand over here, what could or what could not be done. But I think in a sense, probably we are also worrying too much about the EU. So then the question is that what are the smart solutions we as like-minded, like-valued countries can do on our own? Is there even a place for the UK? Let's throw in the wild thing, the UK, not meaning that they should be a member of the NIB, but they are like-minded in many ways. So these kind of coalitions of the willing, they have started to form. They are not official yet, but I think certain countries, in many ways, they are fed up with that from the 27 EU member states or whatever coalition you have. There's always one or two or three who want to make a trade-off. And then a question, and I think the EU has already shown some spine, that yes, there are decisions now made that are not made in unison. And I think that's the thing. So maybe just thinking about the positives, what more we can do with the countries, the partners who think alike. Because if we don't do that, ESG will have a totally new meaning, the worst case, and that's enterprise standards from Gosplan. And that's certainly not what we want to happen. So through the positive.
Stefan.
Yeah, and here, to build on Esa's comment here, I think that in the energy system in the Nordics, there are enormous opportunities. So just the 4 countries together, and also with the Baltics that we are interconnected with, there are a lot of opportunities to create a better system, to discuss and develop based on the complementary skills that we have. And we can do that a lot more than what we're doing today. And I also think when we saw the 4 3 prime ministers and a president maybe, having breakfast together here in Denmark, and all of us could feel, this is our people. They are together trying to develop something when NATO and Finland came in. Finland and Sweden came into NATO. We should build on that, and we should do that in more sectors now. That we started with security, the next is energy, and then probably also on health, social issues. There's a lot of things that we can work more intertwined with, and we can create the most attractive region in the world. Do you think that the best brains from all over the world want to go to the US if that kind of whirling goes? No, they would come to us if we manage to develop ourselves the right way. I think that.
So how do we drive that? Where do we start? What do you think, Lene?
I think this is great. I really do agree with you. And to me, it also says, let's move. Let's not necessarily wait for everyone else. Let's get it done. And we've got a lot of experience in doing it. And when I think about the video we saw at the very beginning of this meeting, where the vision of the NIB, I think it has probably never been more relevant than it is today. So there is a lot to build on there. And I think you have already mentioned both energy and defense, and I'm happy you also mentioned health. I think one of the things we really need to do also is to ensure that we attract the best talent, because we have a lot of great research going on, and if we complement that with the top talents from around the world, and lots of them want to come, then we will also be building in really truly for the not just the near but the longer term future. So I think this coalition of the willing, as you called it, and can certainly buy into that. I think it's the right thing to do.
We have a few minutes left. I was just wondering if hard power versus green power is kind of a false choice. How would you convince both policymakers, financiers, investors, that investment in your sector is also an investment in Stefan's sector as a joint venture?
A couple of examples. So first of all, the defense, not talking about Part3 as a company just, but basically the defense industry. So a vast number of our sub-suppliers today are actually civil companies. And they are already obeying all the ESG standards. And I would say that the vast majority of major defense companies are doing the same. My company is going to be CO2, our emissions will be zero by the end of 2030. So what's happening at the moment is that alternative fuels, everything is compatible. We use SBTI and so on. So everybody is serious about this one. And I think the point over here is that there's a lot happening now in defense. You might remember the times when defense innovations came to the civil sector sometime later. Then in the turn of the millennium, that started to change because of .coms and the internet and so forth. Today, I dare to say that defense is once again in the position where it has been. In certain areas, we're talking about AI, certain construction solutions, we are clearly 10 years ahead of the civil sector. So I think this collaboration about innovation and so forth, that's the key point over here. Everybody takes this seriously, and then also bearing in mind that in our societies, as we have the same values, we need to be accepted in the society. We are pretty accepted today as there's an acute war going on, but long term, if we are not playing by the rules, if we are not playing by the book, if we are neglecting our responsibilities, so that will be harmful. So I think all of this is intertwined for sure. By the way, when talking about, let's not forget about one thing. It's not just Europe where there's war. Or who's preparing. The same is true in the Indo-Pacific. If you're looking at what Taiwan, what's the position of Taiwan, what about Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, Indonesia, many of those countries. And so who would have believed 5 years ago that the most stable place in the whole world is South America before certain things now starting to
For
happen.
Venezuela and stuff like that.
So we have these like-minded countries, and we could take Canada as an example as well. So certain Nordic capabilities when we are talking about climate change, when we are talking about Arctic and so forth. So I think we need to think maybe a little bit out of the box. So what are we actually trying to do? For instance, anything Nordic, anything Arctic, we need partners.
And Stefan, I could ask the same question to you, that seeing these challenges as like two sides of the same coin.
I think that for defense of the Nordic countries or any place else in the world, you know, a stable grid, a lot of energy that you can use for all the bases that we need to have, and a lot of warfare is actually now electrified as well, with batteries, drones, and a lot of other things. And if you're going to be the best using technologies, as you're saying, using AI for warfare, what's one of the most important things into that is a lot of electricity. So I really think that it is fully intertwined. Energy security is national security. And for us, it's Nordic security, as we are already fully intertwined. And we have a very, very good starting point, and that's important to remember. So we can even increase that competitive advantage. But then we need to build out a lot more than what we're doing today.
Yeah.
And that is together with NIB, of course, but you know, regulations, market and politicians is, as you say, right now still too slow, but I can see some signs. They're starting to speeding up. And that's
you'll
good.
keep putting pressure on the politicians. Lena, I'd just like to end with you representing investors. I know that you oversee huge investments here in Denmark and in the region. And right now it's basically more on healthcare and in that sector. But when you look at investor in general and with the challenges we're facing, do you think investors will start to invest their money in different patterns in the next coming years in regards of what we're facing, so intertwined all the time?
I think it would be great to say yes, but I think that's a little bit naive to think about it that way, because whichever way you think about investors, they go for where they can see good returns. They go for where do they see a good business case. Now you guys were just building one basically that could be a really good investment case or a good business case. So I think it again comes back to, again for the EU to, and Nordic, prioritize. What do we really want to have, to further and to grow? And that can be, defense, energy, health, as I always remind you, so don't forget that next time. And then we need to remove the barriers to being more competitive. And we can go back to the Draghi report. There are lots of stuff that we can do. If we do that, and investors can see there's a good business case, and in Europe it's a competitive business case, then money will flow. It's as easy as that, but that's where it starts. Making sure that we are competitive, building good business cases, then money will flow, then there will be investments.
I'd like to end with giving you a few seconds each to say, when we talk about a strong marriage, celebrating NIB today, looking ahead at the next anniversary, let's just say in 5 years' time, do you stay optimistic at this level, here, or here, on where we're facing right now, what we're facing right now? How optimistic are you, Esa?
I'm more optimistic than
Up here?
Yeah, well, more optimistic than I used to be a couple of years ago. We just need to, because we have started to take action, for sure, and that's good. Just one fair warning, Russia will not change. Think it from this perspective. What is the business model of Russia? It's creating conflict. It's a kleptocracy. It has always been for hundreds of years. It's so deeply rooted. They will not change. So that would be naive thinking. So therefore, what we need to do is to play our game together and so forth. And now we have started to take those steps. So by far more optimistic than I used to be a couple of years ago.
Stefan, where are you on this line?
I would say that short term, I'm not on the top. So if you just say 5 years, I think it will be hard.
Okay.
But if you look more long term, and this is also from a macroeconomic professor I had once, he said that if you have the institutions in place, if you have a democracy that functions, if the entrepreneurs own their patents, and if you have a welfare system that works, the economic growth will come. And I think that especially for the Nordics, we have a very, very good business case for the long-term future. But we need to protect, and for business leaders like us as well, we need to stand up for these values because they will be fought. Yeah. And that is what we're seeing in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Lena.
As I've said, I'm quite an impatient person and I get a little bit frustrated with many of the things that I see. But I'm also very optimistic. And my view also is that if you are too pessimistic, nothing will ever happen.
Nothing will get done.
No, nothing will get done. So being impatient and in the core actually optimistic, I guess I'm up here somewhere. We do need to get it done and we can do it. We just said that.
That's true.
And to end on that high level, I would like to thank our panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena.
Really enjoyed that conversation.
Thanks.